And what is it that we're really doing?
We're going to break an unbreakable Nazi code and win the war.
Oh.
So, do you have problems with puzzles at your table? Like, are puzzles as a component of gameplay mechanics problematic for you or your players?
Have you ever been at a table and there's a puzzle, and the puzzle is either just impossible or really insultingly stupid?
Yeah, Nathan, I totally get you there. I'm either intimidated to make puzzles as a GM because my players are brilliant, or I feel like my puzzles are absolutely, like, game-stoppingly impossible. What do we do here?
Well, here's what you should aim to do with any sort of puzzle. It doesn't matter if it's D&D or video games. You have to encourage the player to explore, to use their resources, and to think critically.
I love that. And so in this video, we are going to try and show you how to make puzzles a more integral part of your game and make them interesting and make them fun.
So before every campaign, people often have a session 0 in which you set down like what your expectations are for a campaign between the DMs and the players. One thing you could do is ask, well, what are your expectations about puzzles? Do you like them? What sort of puzzles do you like?
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, like, as a GM, when I'm sort of running my session 0, if everyone is on board with puzzles, I'm like, okay, I know what's going on, but now I'm a little intimidated because, frankly, I'm not really a very good maker of puzzles, or at least I thought I wasn't. And so now I've got this new challenge that I've got to set up to meet their expectations. But at least I know what they are.
You could go a step further, though, because there are many different types of puzzles. There are puzzles that are just a brief pause in whatever story beats you're doing. And there are puzzles that could take multiple sessions or an entire campaign. You have to know the scope of what your players want.
So, for example, you might have players at your table that are just like, I hate math. I don't like adding up modifiers to skill checks that I make. And so if a puzzle is going to involve a lot of heavy math, that's out for me. However, I enjoy riddles. I really like the way riddles unfold in a game. So now all of a sudden you can hone what it is you're making to sort of live up to those expectations. Don't get me wrong, not everything you do as a GM has to perfectly cater to everything at your table, but it does help.
All right, so session 0, out of the way, over and done with. Awesome.
So let's talk about the different types of puzzles that you can implement into your game. And you have basically 3 categories. You have logic puzzles, you have riddles, and then you have environmental challenges. These are the 3 basic areas that we're going to talk about today.
So, logic puzzles. This can occur when you give your players a base case of knowledge, and they have to sit with these facts, let them ruminate, pick them apart, and use their own knowledge bases to draw conclusions from these things and apply it to the situation that they're in.
Yeah, one really good example of that is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. When Indiana Jones is sort of in the temple and he has to cross that floor, and the floor is covered in these glyphs, and he realizes that he has to only step on the right glyphs that spell something out. So what's his base of knowledge? He draws upon his understanding of the religiosity that surrounds this whole thing.
Name of God, Jehovah. But in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with an I.
And he has to spell out Jehovah or something like that. But he steps on the wrong letter first. He steps on a J, it collapses, and he says, wait a minute, there's another spelling of this. I should be using that one. This is how logic puzzles work.
In that case, very much in a short-term sense of a logic puzzle. Or you might be role-playing as detectives with your team. You might have a logic puzzle that lasts an entire campaign. It can last however long you want, really.
That's something that's really important to note, is the duration of a puzzle. There are the types of puzzles that you have to solve in the immediate term to get through a door, and then there are also puzzles that you solve over the course of longer periods of time that maybe have a larger sense of reward about them.
When you're thinking about how to conduct these logical puzzles in your game, think about tactility. Take advantage of the fact that humans are beings that need to hold something, to get to know it, to look at it, to fiddle with it, to understand it and then use it. That's literally how we evolved in part.
As a maker and as a visual thinker, I love to get my hands on the thing that we're actually going to be sort of trying to decipher. I've got this awesome cryptics here. I love as a GM to make like small letters and put a wax seal, coffee stain them, burn the edges, and hand that stuff to my players so that they can physically see what it is that they have to tackle.
And the beautiful thing about this is that it solves a really big problem with trying to include logic puzzles in your games. You, as the DM, have to bridge the gap between the player and what they're trying to investigate in their environment. That is hard, playing the middleman between these two things. What you're doing when you're introducing tactility is you are bringing the environment directly to them. You don't have to stand in the middle of their exploration.
That is spot on. So as a DM or GM, you are constantly tasked with being the descriptor. You describe the environment. When you have to sort of describe not only this object and how it feels in the hand, but also how the letters line up and where they might get those clues from, there's a real dissociative kind of relationship that you have. Nathan makes a great point by talking about putting it right in their hands. So tactility all the way.
And then we have riddles. Think of the classic example. I'm probably sure you've heard of this, and I'm very sure you're rolling your eyes just in about 2 seconds.
Ask me the questions, Bridgekeeper. I'm not afraid.
What is your name?
My name is Sir Lancelot of Camelot.
You get to a bridge, and there's a dude standing at the bridge, and he's like, yeah, I'll let you cross my bridge. Only if you solve this riddle. Cue the eye roll.
Yeah, what is your name? Yeah, totally. And I'm thinking of another riddle situation that is also, one of the classic examples of how this even wound up in our game in the first place and goes to the very history of riddles in gameplay. And that is in The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. You have the situation with Bilbo Baggins and Gollum under the Misty Mountains. Bilbo needs to find his way out, and Gollum knows the way. So Gollum, who enjoys riddles, decides to get into a contest of riddles with Bilbo and basically says, if you answer my riddles, I will show you the way out. And if you don't, we eats it, my precious.
Why don't we have a game of riddles? Yes, just you and me.
Just us.
So Gollum's going to eat Bilbo if he doesn't answer the riddles.
So, Todd, I see where you're going in that D&D and Lord of the Rings are pretty closely connected in some respects, but where are we really going with the history aspect? Can we trace that back even further?
Yeah, totally. So this is really cool, and I'm going to nerd out for a second, but, so here you have Gollum who wants to eat Bilbo Baggins. All right, let's see how far back we can go. If you go back to Greek mythology and you look at the story of the Sphinx, guarding the wall, the entryway to Thebes, asking the people that are trying to enter the city the riddle. And the riddle sort of, I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit, but the riddle is basically what walks on 4 legs at breakfast, what walks on 2 legs at lunch, and walks on 3 legs at dinner was the riddle that was presented in some form or another. And if you did not answer the riddle correctly, the Sphinx ate you. So this ties very closely to Gollum. And I start thinking to myself, is Gollum the Sphinx?
And if it loses, what then? If it loses,
Precious, then we eat it.
if Baggins loses, we eat it whole.
I think the word sphinx directly translates to strangle from Greek. And in relation to English, we have the word sphincter, which is any circular muscle that contracts, like your pupils, your mouth, your bum, right?
Yeah, there's that.
Yes. But why is that relevant? Right, well, the Sphinx is sort of like a chimera of a lioness, a female, and I think an eagle. Now, the lioness, right? The lioness in nature likes to strangle her prey before she eats it. That's interesting. So now we have Sphinx meaning to strangle. We have the lioness who strangles her prey before she eats it. How is this related to Gollum?
So the coolest thing about this that I found was that, number one, Gollum, before he was Gollum, was Smeagol. Smeagol strangles his brother Deagle to get the ring for a birthday present. And so now you've got further proof that in some way Gollum is functioning like this Sphinx because he strangled his brother. And then the fact that he loves the riddles even further enhances this idea that these two are influenced.
Give it to us. Nasty, filthy Herbertses.
Yes! Yes! But this all goes back to the riddle, right? The riddle as a puzzle component to your game, might have been born of this place, but it's a classic way to get your players engaged and to potentially, create a barrier that can be crossed through the solving of that riddle.
Now, let's take a peek, open the door, so to speak. Ooh, this is rhyming. On environmental challenges, we mentioned earlier the classic locked door, right? Maybe you try to lockpick it and see if you can open it. That's fairly one-dimensional, but it's a good start. We can take some simple environmental challenge, say a locked door, and we can try to add interesting layers of complexity to it.
So oftentimes your players, when they encounter a locked door, will check for traps. And so it's possible that rather than having the check reveal that there is a trap or there is not a trap, the check could sort of unravel or begin to unravel the puzzle associated with opening this door.
Maybe you describe to them as they start to turn the handle, you can hear pieces of metal clinking together, almost things shifting like on gears. There's something behind this locking mechanism that is beyond what's normal.
Or perhaps as they depress the lever down on the door, they hear it go through several stages of clicking, and they notice that just above the door, there are a series of glyphs that scroll by with each further depression of the lever. Perhaps there is a way to sort of go through those glyphs in order to get the door to open.
Perhaps even there's an inscription on the front of the door hinting at some sort of way involving riddles and or logical puzzles to this environmental challenge. See, we're intersecting. This is awesome.
Just like the doors of Doran before the party enters the mines of Moria in the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf sees the riddle that's on the door that says, "Speak, friend, and enter."
It reads, "The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria. Speak, friend, and enter."
What do you suppose that means?
Oh, it's quite simple. If you are a friend, you speak the password and the doors will open.
At which point they spend hours at the door trying to figure out how to get in. The answer's actually really simple. It was just a matter of saying the word friend in Elvish and the doors would open. I think it was Belloc.
Belloc.
But, you get the point, right? It could just be some kind of verbal component that by answering the riddle and speaking it out loud, the door unlocks.
Maybe even when they're investigating how to open this door, somebody might be able to find an alternate route. That's totally possible in a real world scenario. Why not give them the freedom to find other ways about this that aren't passing through that door?
I think one thing that's really important to remember here is in an environmental challenge like this, context is key. You want to make the players should understand, number one, where they are. Number two, what is some of the history around the space that they're in so that their answers to that riddle, and frankly, you as the GM, your formation of that riddle makes sense in the context of the world so that the pool of potential answers to this problem are limited to contextual things inside of your game.
I'm imagining a scenario, and I'm getting really excited about this personally. Imagine you set up this little environment with minifigures and all that and tiles on the table in front of you. Maybe you take a little laser pointer, right? And you put it somewhere in the room, right? And you have a door and maybe there's a little gem on it. And somebody might by intuition assume that in order to open this door, you have to shine the laser on the gem. But the problem is there are some things in the way and maybe you can't move some of those things and maybe they'll find that there are some mirrors to reflect this laser off of. maybe your team of players could tinker around with a live set to solve this environmental challenge.
Yeah, that could be really interesting. And it kind of brings me back to Indiana Jones again. This one was Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones has the staff. He's got the amulet on top of the staff, so he had to collect the right parts, right? Then he had to put the staff in the right location. There's holes all over the ground. And then he had to wait for the sun to be at exactly the right angle to go through the gem in the center of the amulet to show him the location of the Ark of the Covenant on the map in the map room.
And I think this brings us back around to tactile elements. What makes that scene from the Raiders of the Lost Ark so exciting is the way that Indiana Jones is directly interacting with the environment. It would kind of feel silly if there was some narrator saying, "And so Indiana Jones took his staff and he put it in the thing and the thing was open." Like, come on, that's silly, right? I think tactile elements are really important to logical puzzles, to riddles, to environmental challenges, because it gives your players the opportunity just to fiddle with something. Imagine you gave them a lock to a door, and maybe it's some sort of combination lock, and as they try combinations, the response that they get is this unlocking or not? Rather than your DM going, "Oh, that's the wrong code." That's much less exciting. That is lame as hell.
Totally agree. And, or if Indiana Jones, read in a book somewhere the location of the Ark of the Covenant and did not have to go through this complex set of tasks with a complex set of objects that all needed to fall together in the right place at the right time to reveal that thing. So, tactile elements. And where do you get these things? I mean, I think one of the best places to get out there and go to would be like a flea market. Find, some old costume jewelry, or find some old tool or something that you can pick up for $1 that's rusted.
Go to any thrift store. They always have really cool trinkets. You can find, I couldn't even describe to you what you could find. There are just so many possibilities. And you could say, "Oh, that looks cool, and that looks cool." You could just buy things without aim, and they're like under $1, so it's awesome. And then you could put these things together into some sort of complex system of clues. Just go crazy.
Or maybe you can't get to any of those places, and you decide, I'm going to draw a map. I'm going to take that map and tear it into 3 or 4 parts. I'm going to coffee stain them, I'm going to burn the edges, and I'm going to provide my players with a piece of that map at certain stages of the game, which will eventually come together like a puzzle. Imagine the look on your players' faces when they receive part number 2 to that map. They already have 1, they can't make much of it, but it's tucked in a bag somewhere, and then all of a sudden you bust out part number 2. Now the game is on. They know that there's a riddle to be solved here, and it's going to go further.
All right.
So,
in summary, we've talked about setting expectations in a session 0. We really encourage you to use that tactile element to really bring whatever puzzle into the real world for your players. And as far as the 3 different types of puzzles go, do not be afraid to blend them. In fact, please blend them, because that could just become so rich and complex, just really wonderful.
Yeah, puzzles can be a really, really incredible component of your game that help to sort of really add flavor to the fiction and really drive the story forward in ways that become more interesting than just the more simplistic, rote kind of fashion that we normally utilize in a game. So please get out there and be brave. Make some of these puzzles for yourself.
Be creative, and don't be afraid to try something that ultimately fails. Even if you think it's a failure, I think that if it encourages your players to explore, to use their resources, and to think critically, no matter how long or short this puzzle takes, I think that's a success.
All right, so couple things. 1, tell us in the comments below some of the puzzle challenges that you've faced, some of your favorite puzzles, ones that have failed, and ones that have really drastically changed the course of your game. We would love to hear about that stuff. And please don't forget, like the video, subscribe down below, and check out the other stuff that we have on Wither and Bloom Studios. We will see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.